Have you ever seen your own flesh and blood suffer while no one around them seemed to care? I witnessed that horrifying moment myself, and it changed everything. You see, I'm not the kind of person who backs down when I see something wrong. And that night, I saw something that no child should ever experience. Something that made my heart break into a million pieces. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The rain was pouring, cold and unforgiving. There she was, my granddaughter, Emma, standing alone in the middle of it, her small frame shaking as she sobbed silently. The worst part? She wasn't even alone because she was abandoned by her friends. No, Emma was surrounded by her classmates, laughing at her pain, her tears. I'd parked just outside the venue for the party, waiting for her to come out. Emma had asked me to stay close, but I didn't expect this. I expected fun, excitement, maybe a few awkward moments from the kids. But I never thought I'd witness cruelty. From the car, I could see her. She was standing there, completely drenched. Her head hung low as she clutched her arms around herself. Her friends, the ones she trusted, were all around her, laughing, pointing. Their words, too cruel to repeat, echoed in my ears. I couldn't hear them clearly from where I sat, but I didn't need to. Their body language said enough. They were making fun of her. It's just a joke, right? I tried to convince myself. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just teasing. It was cruelty disguised as fun. I watched as Emma wiped her eyes, trying to force a smile, but it wasn't working. She was barely holding it together. The little girl I'd spent so many years loving and nurturing was standing there, shattered by the very people who should have supported her. What made it worse was how those kids didn't seem to care. They kept laughing. Some of them even nudged each other, whispering more insults. I was about to turn my car off and go get her, but I hesitated. Should I just call out to her? Or should I approach slowly, give her some space, let her handle it on her own? That was the moment I made up my mind. No one else was going to protect her. I was about to do something no one expected, least of all those kids. Something that would change everything. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. With every step I took toward her, I could feel the tension in the air. They noticed me. The laughing stopped. Emma looked up and caught my eye, but before I could reach her, I walked toward Emma, my heart pounding in my chest. But it wasn't just because I was angry. No, it was something else. Something inside me was ready to snap, ready to defend her no matter what the cost. But little did I know, it wasn't going to be that simple. As I got closer, I saw the faces of the kids around her. The laughter, once so loud, had dwindled into uncomfortable silence. Sarah, the leader of the group, looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and defiance. She was about 13, tall, with long brown hair that fell perfectly over her shoulders. You could tell she was used to being the center of attention, used to getting what she wanted, and right now, she wanted to be in control of the situation. And Emma? She was shrinking back, trying to make herself as small as possible, hoping the attention would just disappear. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice firm but calm. My eyes locked on Sarah first, then the others. Jack, a kid with a bad attitude who never seemed to think before he spoke, snickered at the question. He was always the type to follow Sarah's lead. "Nothing, just having some fun," Sarah said with a forced smile, trying to play it off like it was all a joke. But there was nothing funny about this. Emma was standing in front of me, drenched in rain, her face streaked with tears she tried to hide. And I knew in that moment I wasn't about to let them walk away from this unscathed. "This doesn't look like fun to me," I said, stepping closer, my eyes not leaving the kids who were still standing around. The tension in the air thickened, and I could see their confidence starting to crack. Sarah shifted on her feet, her smirk faltering as she glanced at the others, looking for support. "You really think making fun of her is fun?" I continued, my voice rising just a little. "You think it's okay to treat someone like this?" I wasn't sure if they were scared, surprised, or just embarrassed, but the silence stretched for a few long seconds. Jack opened his mouth, probably ready to make another cruel remark, but I cut him off. "Don't say another word." I could feel the weight of their gazes on me, some nervous, others defiant. Sarah, though, wasn't backing down. She folded her arms across her chest, the tough girl act still strong. "What's your problem, lady? We're just messing around. She needs to learn to laugh at herself." I glanced down at Emma. Her face was still pale, her body shaking, not from the cold, but from humiliation. The tears weren't stopping. I could see the hurt in her eyes, and I knew then that this wasn't just a childish joke. It was bullying. This wasn't the time to be polite. I wasn't going to sugarcoat things. I looked straight at Sarah, my voice colder now. "You're not going to get away with this. Not on my watch." I grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her close, standing between her and the others, shielding her from their prying eyes. The kids were still silent, but I knew things weren't over yet. I'd stirred the pot, and they weren't happy about it. But I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. As I held Emma's hand, I could feel the energy in the air shift. This wasn't just about defending her anymore. It was about making sure they understood the seriousness of what they'd done. At first, I thought standing up to them would be enough, but I was wrong. The kids weren't backing down, not by a long shot. In fact, things were about to get even uglier. The silence between us felt heavy, like an uncomfortable pause before a storm. Sarah took a deep breath and, with a huff, pushed her shoulders back, trying to regain some of her lost bravado. She glared at me, then at Emma, and finally spoke again, her voice sharp with irritation. "Who do you think you are, huh?" Sarah sneered. "Just some old lady who thinks she can tell us what to do?" Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let that shake me. I could see her scanning me, sizing me up like I was some kind of easy target. But she had no idea what she was up against. I wasn't just any grandmother. I'd fought battles in my life that made this moment feel like a small skirmish. But watching my granddaughter suffer, that was a whole different war. Jack, still lurking in the background, tried to egg Sarah on. "She's right, though. Maybe the baby should stop crying," he said with a laugh. The others chuckled along with him. It was like they had rehearsed this, mocking Emma, who had no one to defend her except me. The anger inside me boiled over. My voice didn't waver as I stepped closer to Sarah, standing tall despite my age. "You think it's funny? You think humiliating a child is just a harmless joke?" I said, my eyes never leaving hers. She flinched slightly, but quickly recovered. "It's not a big deal. She needs to get over it," Sarah replied, her tone dismissive, as if Emma's feelings didn't matter. I could feel the blood rushing to my head. I'd had enough of this. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was disgusted. I moved in front of Emma, my hand still clutching hers. The rain beat down on us, but it felt like the storm wasn't outside. It was right in front of me. "You don't get it," I said, my voice steady and firm. "You're all going to learn the hard way that this kind of cruelty has consequences." Sarah's expression shifted. I could see the hint of nervousness now in her eyes. I wasn't sure if it was because she was genuinely worried or if she was just trying to save face in front of the others. Either way, I wasn't done yet. I was about to make sure these kids knew the damage they'd done. "What are you going to do?" Jack piped up, trying to provoke me, but I wasn't falling for it. I turned my gaze to Sarah again and said slowly, "I'm going to take this to the principal. I'm going to tell your parents, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done." Sarah's eyes widened for a moment, and I could see her calculating her next move. "You can't stop us, old lady," she spat. But I didn't flinch. "We'll see about that," I replied. And with that, I turned to leave. But as I did, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was the rain or the feeling of dread settling in my gut, but something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I thought it was over. I thought I had made my point, but I was wrong. The kids weren't just going to apologize or walk away. No, something bigger was brewing beneath the surface, and I could feel it building as I stood there, my heart racing. The next day, I received a call from the school. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when the principal's name appeared on the caller ID, my heart sank. Was she calling to apologize? Or was she calling to defend Sarah and the others? I braced myself for the worst, but as soon as the principal's voice came through the phone, I knew things were about to change. "Ms. June, I wanted to personally thank you for bringing this to our attention. We've already spoken with Sarah and the other children involved, and we've placed them on a suspension for bullying." My breath caught. I hadn't expected it to happen this quickly. In fact, I hadn't expected them to take it seriously at all. But there it was. The school was doing something about it. They were taking action. "We'll also be involving their parents, and we're planning a school-wide anti-bullying campaign as a result of this incident," the principal added. "I hope you'll let Emma know we're doing everything we can to make sure something like this doesn't happen again." As I hung up the phone, a wave of relief washed over me. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed those kids to understand the real consequences of their actions, not just at school, but in their lives. Emma didn't deserve to be a victim of their cruelty, and I knew she wasn't the only one out there suffering because of kids like Sarah. Later that day, Emma and I sat down together. She seemed quiet, a little distant, but I could tell she was processing everything. I didn't want to push her, but I needed to know how she felt about everything that had happened. "Grandma," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you think they'll ever stop?" Her eyes were filled with uncertainty, and I could see the vulnerability beneath her tough exterior. "They were just making fun of me, right?" "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "What they did was not just making fun of you. They were hurting you. And that's something that should never be allowed to happen." I could see the tension in her face start to ease, and for the first time since the party, a small smile began to form. She wasn't completely healed, but I knew this moment was a step toward helping her regain her strength. That night, I received another call. This time, it was from Sarah's mother. "Miss June," she said, her voice cold, "you've caused quite a stir. You're going to regret what you've done to my daughter." I froze. This wasn't what I expected. I thought the matter was settled. But as I listened to Sarah's mother continue her rant, I knew one thing for sure. Things were far from over. This battle wasn't just about protecting Emma anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I received more calls, and Emma and I had multiple meetings with the school, who kept me updated on the progress. Sarah and the other kids had been suspended, but the fallout didn't end there. The school made it clear that bullying would not be tolerated, and they put measures in place to ensure that students understood the importance of kindness and respect. Sarah's mother had called me a few times, leaving voicemails full of threats. "You don't know what you've started, June," she'd say. "This isn't over. You'll see." But the more she called, the more I stood firm. I knew I had done the right thing. I knew I couldn't back down, not after seeing how much pain her daughter had caused Emma. One afternoon, I got a call from the principal again. This time, it was good news. Sarah's parents had come in for a meeting, and they were finally taking responsibility for their daughter's actions. They apologised on Sarah's behalf and agreed to further disciplinary actions, including community service. The school was making sure Sarah and her classmates understood the weight of their actions. Emma, for the first time in a long time, seemed to breathe a little easier. She was healing, slowly but surely. I could see it in the way she carried herself. Her posture had straightened, and she wasn't as afraid to look others in the eye. She was gaining her confidence back, and that, in itself, was worth everything I had fought for. That evening, Emma and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The rain from days before had cleared, leaving a peaceful calm in the air. I turned to Emma, her face glowing with a quiet strength, and I could feel my heart swell with pride. "Grandma, I don't know what I would have done without you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, but not from fear. It was relief. "I don't think I would have been able to stand up to them if you hadn't been there." I smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Sweetheart, you're stronger than you realize. I'm just glad I could be there for you when you needed it most." I could see the gratitude in her eyes. The weight she had carried for so long had lifted. And while the scars from the experience might remain, I knew they wouldn't define her. She wasn't just a victim of bullying anymore. She was someone who had stood up, with a little help from me, and had learned to rise above the cruelty of others. As for Sarah and the others, they learned the hard way. Their suspension wasn't just a break from school, it was a wake-up call. The consequences were real, and it wasn't just about missing class. It was about realizing that their actions had affected someone deeply. Sarah's parents, despite their initial anger, became involved in a community program to educate their daughter on kindness and empathy. I didn't expect her to change overnight, but at least she had to face the consequences of her behavior. The kids in Emma's class, they were different now. There was an awareness, a shift in how they treated each other. I couldn't help but think that, in a way, Emma's pain had sparked something bigger than just her. It had affected them all. In the weeks that followed, I noticed something different in Emma. She had this quiet confidence about her, a strength that wasn't there before. It wasn't just because the kids had been punished, but because she had learned how to stand up for herself. And I had learned something too, that sometimes it takes more than just love. Sometimes you have to fight for what's right. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the yard. Emma turned to me, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm not scared anymore, Grandma." I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close. "I knew you weren't, sweetheart. You just needed to believe in yourself." As we sat there, the world seemed peaceful again. The storm had passed, and we had weathered it together. And I knew, with all my heart, that no matter what happened in the future, Emma would never be alone again. Fade to black, with the soft sound of the rain gently tapping against the windows, signalling the end of one chapter and the beginning of another.